Hello, my name is Tosin Anishere. I am from Nigeria, based in Ireland. I'm a Microsoft MVP, Microsoft certified trainer. I work with Avanade as a consultant. I specialize in Azure, Microsoft 365 technologies. My area of expertise is in architecting and administering identity, security, and governance solution in Azure. Okay. Before I begin, I would like to thank our sponsors. I would like to thank Microsoft, Elevate, Macintosh, Support Link, Ololox, Icons, Covenant Technologies, Jerry Computer Solutions, and particularly Tech Summit Nigeria for the privilege to speak on this platform. Our topic that I will be speaking on is getting prudent with Azure policy. And our agenda for today, we will be, I'll be taking us back through to the introduction to give us um, basic understanding of group management with regards to Azure policy. We'll be talking about what is Azure policy, why Azure policy, the steps to implement Azure policy, and lastly, we would have our demo. Hopefully, time permits us to go through the demo together. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Companies usually they're subject to many regulations and compliance rules. For instance, when it comes to audits in an organization, all organization, if I'm not mistaken, wants to ensure each department implement and deploy resources correctly. Now, this is the point where we get prudent with Azure policy in order to implement compliance measure. Now, this organization usually have more than one subscriptions in their tenant. And there's this need to, efficiently manage the subscription, like access to subscription, policies on the subscription, compliance for those subscription. There's a need for those. Now, please permit me to talk briefly about organizing Azure resources. And for us to effectively organize our resources in our environment, we need to be able to define management group hierarchy. I meant to say management levels. Okay, so in Azure, there are four levels of management. We have the management group, just like you can see on the screen. We have subscriptions, we have resource groups, and we have resources. Now, I will start with management group. Management group basically helps us to manage access, to manage policy and compliance for many subscriptions in our tenants. Now, in a situation whereby we want to, let's assume, apply policy, the same policy to maybe three subscriptions in our tenants. Now, rather than individually applying policy to, let's say, subscription one, subscription two, subscription three, what we can do is we can have all of these subscription grouped together under a management group. And now we can apply policy on the management group. What happens is all the subscriptions in this management group automatically inherit the conditions that are applied to the management group. Now, that's the topmost level in the hierarchy of levels of management. Now, the next one is subscription itself. I believe we know what subscription is. This subscription in our environment most of the time is logically associated to user accounts as well as resources that these users have created. Now, each subscription that we have in our tenants or in our environment has limits. They has quota on maybe the amount of resources that that subscription can create or that subscription can use. Organization as well can use this subscription to manage costs and resources that are created by users in the environment. When I say subscription to manage costs, uh, let's assume in our tenant we have maybe subscription, and we have about $150. Let's take for instance. Now we can use this subscription to manage costs such that we don't spend beyond our quota. Okay, so that's the subscription level. Now the next level, which is below that, don't forget we're taking it in hierarchy, is resource group. Resource group here is referred to as logical containers where we can deploy and manage Azure resources like our databases, storage accounts, web apps, and so on and so forth. Now, those are resource group. And lastly, we have the resources. With resources, we can refer to that as instance of a service. Now, this is what you create in your environment. We have the likes of a virtual machines, we have app services, we have storage, we have SQL database, and so on and so forth. Now, again, from this hierarchy, you will see that resources can we can have different resources under a resource group. A resource group under a particular subscriptions, and we can have more than one subscription in our management group, and these are the management levels. Please, I am going somewhere, kindly follow me through. I want to dwell a little bit more on management group, and I'm going to be using the diagram on the screen to take it a little bit further. Now, when it comes to management group, what it does is it provides a level of scope above subscription. If you remember the previous slide here, you would see that in the hierarchy, management group is topmost. Okay, now back to our diagram. That's why I said it's a level above our subscription. Now we can organize our subscriptions into containers called management group. I said that earlier. When you have more than one subscription together, they can be grouped under management group. That way one will be able to apply governance conditions to this management group. And basically, one can target, we can target policies to this management group, when also budgets, spend budget across the subscription, even compliance and cost reporting, we can have that. Let's take for instance, okay, uh, when we apply policies to management group, we can decide to say, okay, this policy we want to apply to the management, we want it to limit the regions available to our virtual machine creation, such that whenever users within our environment are creating a VM or deploying a VM, they have to stay within a particular region. That's because we want to conform to the organization standard. Now, this policy, when is applied to management group, what it means is that all the subscriptions that is in that container, don't forget we call management group container that houses all subscription. Now, all the subscriptions, the resources under the subscription, everything is going to inherit the policy, and it will ensure that the VM created will only be specific to the region that we have specified in our policy. Okay, let's take a look at this diagram that we have before us on the screen. You would see what we called roots management group. Okay, now this roots management group depicts, I would say we can have more than one management group together. Okay, so the roots management group allows global policy as well as Azure role assignment to be applied on the directory level. Okay, now with this root management group, we can actually build maybe flexible structure of management group and subscription just to organize our resources into hierarchy for unified policy and access management. Now, this diagram you're looking at, you will see that it's holding up both management groups and subscription. Let's take, for instance, again, don't forget we said management group is more or less a container. It houses different subscriptions, right? Now, if, for instance, we want to have more than one management group as well as other subscription that we want to apply our Azure policy on, we can have all of these under a root management group. And don't forget, that's on the directory level. I don't know if you're following me. No, um, let's say, for instance, this diagram on the screen, there's a particular management group called production. I'm sure you can see that. Now, this, when we apply policy to that management group called production, this policy will inherit even onto the EA subscriptions, that is the enterprise subscription, that are descendants of that management group. And what it means is that it's going to apply to all the VMs under that subscription. Now, one thing I would like us to note is that security policy cannot be altered by resources or subscription owner. And that's the essence of that, is so that we can have improved governance in our environment. Okay, so now having said all this, what exactly is Azure policy? Azure policy is a service in Azure, and we can use it to enforce different rules over our resources. Now, the essence of that is so that our resources can stay compliant within our organization, and it can conform to our organization standard and even our service level agreements. When we create Azure policy, we can assign it to any management level. Remember that hierarchy: management group, subscription, resource groups, and resources. So we can apply it to any of the management level, and even we can manage these policies within our tenants. Let me put it this way to us. I can say Azure policy basically runs evaluation and scans for resources that are not compliant. It's That's also what the Azure policy do. Now let's go further. Why Azure policy? What is the answer? Why do we need Azure policy in our environment? I'm going to take it from the advantage standpoint in the areas of enforcement and compliance, scaling, as well as remediation. Okay. For enforcement and compliance, we can have real-time policy evaluation and enforcement, you know, on our resources or on a management group in our environment. And if you don't want that, we can even do it periodically or even on demand. We can have on-demand compliance evaluation. Okay, I'm definitely going to take us through this for us to see during our demo. Now, still on the advantage standpoint, we have apply policies at scale. Okay, we can apply policies to management group with control access to the entire organization. Remember, I said the management group is a container for more than many subscriptions in our environment. So we can actually use this Azure policy to control our entire organization, bringing it to the standard of our organization. Okay, and we can even apply multiple policies and aggregate policy state with something called policy initiative. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Still talking about the advantage standpoint of why Azure policy, we have remediation. We can have real-time remediation for our resources that we are just creating, or even existing resources in our environment. Now, having said all this, you still be wondering, why do my organization need Azure policy anyway? Okay, I would say Azure policy is important, especially if your organization is the type that have multiple engineering team. And I will explain. So let's say In our organization, we have a different engineering team. We have the security team, we have the infrastructure team, we have the software development team, and so on and so forth. Okay. And all of these team, they have access to the tenants. Okay. And users within this different team have access maybe to deploy VMs, for instance. Now, with Azure Policy, we can make all of these different teams conform to the standard of organization. In a situation whereby you want a particular VM to be created, you can use Azure Policy for all of these teams to conform to that standard. So if you have multiple teams in your organization, then you need Azure Policy. It's important for you. Another reason is obvious reason is if you have multiple subscriptions, some organization has more than one. I can say, 5, 10, depending on how large these organizations is. So if your organization has multiple subscription and you want to be able to manage your resources, then there is a need for Azure policy and it is important to your organization. I've said this before. If you want to standardize or enforce, your cloud resources that you're configuring, yes, Azure policy is important to us. And other things like maybe managing costs, regulatory compliance, and so on and so forth. And we have, different use cases that we can use for this. We can decide to say, oh, let's enforce a required tag and value. We can use Azure policy for that. Or you do not want your users to deploy resources in a particular region, okay, or you want to enforce them or restrict them to a particular region, we can use Azure policies to restrict your location. We can even specify set of virtual machine SKUs, or we can specify the resource type that we want our organizations to deploy. So these are different use cases and they are important. And I would say that's a reason why we need Azure policy. Let's take it on. Let's move on to the steps, steps to implement this Azure policy. As you can see on the screen, we have 4 steps. Now, this step, I will talk about them one after the other, and we are going to do a demo afterwards. So I'll start with browse policy definition. Okay. Now, this policy definition is what expresses what we need to evaluate, what actions to take. And every policy definition usually would have a condition that it is enforced. Let me give us an example. Let's take, for instance, we want to prevent VMs from being deployed based on the VM size series. Remember, we have different family series or size series. We have the B series, we have the D series, we have F series, and so on and so forth. Now, we want to restrict our users whenever they want to deploy VM, want to restrict them to a particular VM size series. We can have this policy defined, okay, based on that. That's just an example. Now, I want us to know that there are many built-in policy definition, that is that we can choose from our Azure portal when we are configuring this. We have the likes of maybe we want to allow location policy. Like I said earlier, maybe you want to restrict the location that your organization can specify when deploying the resources. We have a built-in location policy for that. Or let's say we want to allow virtual machine SKUs, just to specify a set of virtual machine SKU that your organization can deploy. Yes, we have built-in for that. And a situation whereby you do not see anyone that conforms to what you need to do, of course, you can have a custom policy as well. Okay, that's the first step. Now, the second step is just like what we can see on the screen is create initiative definition. What's this initiative definition? It's just a set of policy definition, that helps us track our compliance state for that larger goal. In essence, it is tailored towards a single objective. Take, for instance, a bank. Okay, you want to ensure that a particular branch office is compliant. Something like that. We can create initiative uh, definition. Now, once we have determined, which policy definition we need, don't forget that's the first step, then we can go further down to create this initiative definition. And don't forget, it will include more than one, okay, or more than even one policy for us. So the next step after that is the scope of the initiation or scope the initiation definition. With this scope, we can actually limit the scope to, let's say, management group, or we can limit the scope to subscription or even resource group. It just helps us to narrow down. Once we create this initiative definition, we can assign the definition just to narrow it down to a scope. This scope basically determines what resources or grouping of resources the policy assignment gets enforced on. That is what the scope is about. And that's the third step. Now, the fourth step, finally, is we can now determine compliance. We have set the rules, we have enforced it. Now we are trying to see which is compliant or which is non-compliant. So once the policy is in place, we can use this compliance to review all the non-compliance initiative or non-compliance policy or non-compliance resources. We have set a rule to say, okay, let's say allow location in a particular location, whether it's Europe or West US or North US, depending on whatever you specify. Now, once this policy is enforced, we want to see which of our resources is compliant and which is non-compliant. Okay, so I think I'm going to take us through a demo for that. So um, this is demo time. It's just going to show us those steps on how to implement Azure policy. Um, Permit me to bring up my screen for that. 1 minute, please. I want to bring up my demo environment. All right. Yes, this is my Azure portal. Okay. There's a need for subscription to be in place. Um, Now we want to create a policy. Okay. So we can either type on the search resources policy, or from a landing page, we can have the policy just like mine because I have this here already. So I can either click here or use the search resources. Either way, it works just fine. So let's assign a policy. I'll go ahead to click policy. Okay, it takes me to the policy page. These are all the policies I have in place already. And as you can see, all of these are in a compliant state. Okay, so for us to start, we are going to go ahead to select assignments. Okay, we want to be able to use this assignment to assign policy. So I'll click on assign policy. Okay, so depending on the management level, do you want to have it on management group level, or do you want to have it on the subscription level or resource group level? We can use this ellipsis to narrow further. For if you have a particular subscription, but for me, I'm going to put my policy on this Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. If I want a particular resource group on that subscription, then I can narrow it down further. But right now, I'm just going to stay within the subscription level. So we'll leave this as it is. Now, the exclusion. So let's assume you want to enforce this policy in your tenant, but you want to exclude some resources or some things. Yes, you can put in the exclusion. You can make use of this exclusion. But for the purpose of this demo, we aren't excluding anything. So let's go further. We have the policy definition. Okay, so let's click on this ellipsis, and these are the built-in policy definition. So I'm going to filter it to allowed locations. Okay, so let's say allowed locations. That should filter it out. Oh, yes, I have it here. So allowed locations is built in. That's what I want to focus on. Now, once I click this, I need to select. And once I have selected, I can put assignment name. I'll assign location for Tech Summit Nigeria. Okay, then description, I can just put that together for my description. Okay, demo. Okay, so the policy enforcement, I'm going to enable it. Of course, it is assigned by me. Okay, now once this is done, we can go to next. It takes us to parameters. Okay, and you can use the drop down to assign parameters. So I want to enforce, let's say, West Europe. I select my West Europe. Okay, now, once I'm done, for now, I'm not doing remediation or non-compliant message. I'll just go ahead to review and create. Okay, so it's going to show me the summary of the things I have done. Remember, I did not do any exclusion. And the parameter is I want to allow only West Europe location for me. So I'll go ahead and click create. So this should go ahead and create for us. Okay, we can check the notification. Yes, creation policy succeeded. Good. That is exactly what we want. Now let's move on to the next to create definitions. Okay, so for definitions, still on the policy assignment page, we click on definition. Okay, this is coming up. Okay, so from here, we are going to click initiative definition. Okay, so from the initiative definition, we want to give it a name, Tech Summit Demo. That's the name I want to give to it. I can use that as the description as well. Now, for categories, I can have my category as new, or I can even use existing. It depends on what I want. So I'll go ahead and I would say, okay, I want to use new. Now, so I have new here. I'm not making changes. Now for the version, we can have just any number. I would say, let's say version 1.0, and yes, I can have that in place. Now this version is just strictly for the metadata. It isn't used for any update or any process whatsoever. That's just what this version is used for. Okay, now once we have completed that, we can click on next. The next should take us, the next should take us to the policy tab. Now, as you can see here, this policy tab, also we can decide add policy definition. Okay, again, I think I want to select allowed location. So let's say allowed, I have to search that. Okay, I can find it here. Now the good thing about this initiative is you can have more than one. Okay, I can decide, okay, I want allowed location and I want allowed virtual machine SKU size. No, it depends on what you want, but it gives you room to have more than one. And okay, I go ahead and add. Okay. The next thing here is for us to, you know, groups. Maybe create group, but for the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to be creating groups. So let's go next. Now, for parameters, we can create, uh, we can look at what these parameters do. I'll also not be creating initiative parameter, but it should the case we want that these are the things we need to do. So I still click on next, and we have our policy parameters. So for the policy, I have allowed location, set value. So is either if I had initially done the initiative parameter, what it means is if I'm going to do the policy, I'm going to use my initiative parameters. But because I haven't set that, I'm going to maintain the set values and I can decide, okay, so what's my set values for allowed location? I can go West Europe and all. Then allowed virtual machine SKUs and all set values. Again, I did not use initiative parameter, so I would stay here and I can decide, okay, what VM standard do I want? Do I want to restrict it to the D series or B series or the M series and all? So for now, I'm not going to select anything. I can come back to select that and so that we can see. Now the next thing is for us to review and create. So it's going to give us a summary of what we have configured and we can click on create. Okay, 1 minute. So I think I need to set this anyway. So let me just randomly pick the standard B2MS randomly, such that it allows me to create this. So let's go ahead. Now you can see it's created. So it's telling me that it has successfully saved my initiative definition. So let's go back to policy. And of course, we want to check our compliance. So as you can see, what was created allow location for Tech Summit Nigeria. That policy forces helping me to understand that some resources are not compliant. And this is the compliance state. So let's click on that. And we can see all the resources that we have that are not compliant. Remember, I want my location as West Europe, and it's letting me know all those other locations that I have that are not West Europe. So it's, pointing it out to us to let us know this is not compliant. So in a situation whereby you want to apply a policy for, audit purpose, for compliant purpose, such that users, whenever they're deploying resources, stay within, the standard, conform within the standard of the organization, we can use this. Okay, so that's what this is about. So remember, we saw when it was the ones that are compliant and the non-compliant. So that's about the policy. I know my time is fast spent. I don't know if we have any questions. I still have remediation as well. And for this remediation is going to bring us to all the policies we have in our environment that need to be remediated. Time will not permit us to go further, but I don't know if we have any question, please, as we have come to the end of this topic, getting prudent with Azure policy. Um, should we have any question, please let me know, or you can even reach out to me on my social media platform. That way we can continue this engagement if you have any questions. All right. So, in the absence of any question, I'm going to say a big thank you for your time, for following me through uh, this. So, thank you very much. And it's once again, it's been a great pleasure to be here with you at the Tech Summit Nigeria. See you all later. Thank you. Bye.